All right, everybody, welcome back to the Millennial Sales Podcast. This is your host, Tommy Tahoe Lamo. 2 days to Thanksgiving. Appreciate you guys tuning in, listening, up in your sales game, even on an off week. So let's get straight into it. For this week's conversation, I've got Jeff Harris. Jeff is the co-founder of Parchment. He founded Parchment basically just right out of school 17 years ago, and they just got acquired in February. And he explains the whole process. We got introduced from a mutual friend who is, a mentee of Jeff's, and Jeff explains pretty much the whole process from, if you're interested in anything entrepreneurship related, he goes through the whole nuts and bolts of, why he started a company. He started with two business partners. Both were, a few decades older than him at the time when he was in his 20s. Went through the whole process of trying to get investors. He got some, friends and family money. I think his parents fronted him a little bit of money that was, quite risky for them. And he ended up being able to pay them back, tenfold after the acquisition or during the ride. But he was really, throughout the whole process of the company, the solo salesperson for a long time, and then really like the chief sales evangelist throughout the duration of the company. He was not leading a sales organization. He was not, directing people. He was the person, feet on the street for 17 years. And, we talk about that whole path of, going through not just the phone book back then, but going through and literally just driving through towns. And they sell to schools and school districts. So he says he's been to pretty much every single school and school district in the country at this point, the back roads of Mississippi, up in Washington, east in DC or Virginia. He covers the, everywhere that you could imagine, and has had those types of conversations. And, from someone that has gone from the very beginning, we've talked to some founders here on this show, we've talked to CEOs, but from someone that has had a successful exit after what he calls his life's work, 17 years on the grind of building up that company and the ups and downs that come with it. So, Jeff and I talked very candidly about that, what it was like to, do all that travel, what it was like to, try to take, investing money from his friends and family and owing that responsibility to pay them back and make sure that he didn't lose their money. We talked about what it was like when they got acquired and how he celebrated with his family, which was pretty cool, and what he's up to next. So, Jeff's got a great energy about him. I think, you're going to get jacked up just listening to him. He's an excitable guy. He's got a ton of wisdom, and he's someone that, we have some thinkers that come on this podcast, right? People that recommend a lot of books and theories. And Jeff he's just a true practitioner. He's someone that just day in and day out did the work and, grinded it out. And I think it's an inspirational story. And I think you're going to learn some tactics on how he actually did that. So we skip theory, we get straight into, the meat and potatoes of sales and how he built up that company. So I think you're going to like this episode. If you do like it, I'd love for you to check me out. First of all, if you're on Apple or Spotify, subscribe to the show, leave a review on Apple. That's what helps this show get more reach more of you people. There's no ads on the podcast. There's no money being made on the podcast. So would love if you could spread that reach or share it with a friend. Pass the link around, share it out on social media. If you're on YouTube, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment, like it. You can see what Jeff and I look like and can kind of vibe with us on that too. If you want more or want to chat me up, you can hit me up. LinkedIn, Tom Alamo, and I'm Tommy Tahoe on Twitter and Instagram. So I get back to everyone's messages. LinkedIn might take a day or two when the inbox gets clogged up, but I do get to every message. So I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. If you were to check out the podcast, if you showed it some love, shoot me a message. The spirit of Thanksgiving, I am very grateful that you people turn in on a weekly basis to hear what I have to say and what my guest has to say about sales. So major shout out to everyone that's listening. I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful for you. Hopefully you pass some of that love on to your friends and family, whether you're with them this Thanksgiving or it has to be virtually through Zoom or FaceTime, given the circumstances. So without further ado, it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. You got a million things to do. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to bring you into my conversation with Jeff Harris. Let's go. All right, Jeff Harris, welcome to Millennial Sales. How we doing?
We're great. Thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. How are you doing today?
I'm well. You know, it's a tough time on a lot of people, but we're making the most of it. And I think, like most sales professionals, we keep a open optimism, and you push through. So that's what we're doing. How about you?
Yeah, no, hey, I'm doing good. I'm a strong believer in that optimism is a strategy, right? So you don't just see things with rose-colored glasses, but if you
Yeah.
think that tomorrow can be better than today, then it keeps you moving forward. So I definitely resonate with that.
That's good. Yeah, I think the worst is behind us. I mean, there's going to be some tough times for a little while, but I'd like to believe that good times are ahead. And, if we think back, 7, 8, 9 months ago to where we were, it was a golden age. And I think
Yeah.
we'll get back to that again, in the short term.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm excited to dive into your background a little bit and just kind of go through, the journey of what the last, 20 so years has been throughout your career. So, I know a lot of the success and the vast majority of your time has been building Parchment, but it looks like before that you actually founded a company, Vroom, for a few years. So I'd love to hear just thinking about that. You're at Pepperdine and you came straight out of school, and it looks like unless your LinkedIn is lying to me, like you came straight out of school and started that company. So could you maybe take me to that place mentally and kind of what you were like and what prompted you to go straight from such a great school I'm sure you had your pick of the litter of jobs, but you chose to go down a path of being a founder.
Yeah, I mean, I always had a passion for entrepreneurialism. That's really what I wanted to do. My sales career was kind of an accident, and I'll share that with you. But really, I wanted to start something, and I was very fortunate to have been in college during the mid to late '90s, and a lot of people don't know, but that was what was kind of referred to as the dot-com boom. That's really when the internet kind of first started to become mainstream. And as a result of that, there was just a flood of capital out there that was propping up all these new ideas. And so it was a really exciting and I guess almost easy time to become an entrepreneur if you had some smarts and you had some energy and passion for something. You could get a company off the ground. So I started with a small technical staffing company that I saw as being a good opportunity. And then, unfortunately, the dot-com boom ended. It ended right, really after September 11th, the tragedy there. And so I was kind of put in a position where I had to make a decision for myself, what next? And I always had this idea of trying to modernize the way transcripts were requested, because I had had some issues getting my transcript to college. And I had seen that the college admission process was kind of evolving from being a very manual process to being something that was going online. So kind of right time, right place. And that's what gave me the idea for Parchment. And yeah, it's been 2 decades since we started, and it's been an incredible journey, and I'm so proud of it.
Yeah. So can you walk me through a little bit about what your transcript process was during your college days that kind of planted that seed in your mind, and then how that turned into really the idea that you wanted to run with?
Yeah. I mean, back when I was growing up, if you needed your transcript, you had to go into your high school counselor or registrar and ask for it, and they would print it out or maybe photocopy it, and then they would address an envelope and put a stamp on it and mail it. And you kind of did this. You crossed your fingers, hoping that it would arrive at the college. And then, I kind of saw that by the time I had graduated college, the college application had moved online. So now colleges were telling prospective students, go to our website and apply. but the transcript was still going through the mail, and that was a real chasm that I saw kind of needed to be crossed. So I had two co-founders, a man named John Reese and another man named Mark Cohen, and we were able to create a technology that automated the request processing and delivery of those documents. Of course, today, we grew Parchment to become really the most widely adopted digital credential service, which allows learners, academic institutions, and employers to request, verify, and share credentials in a simple and secure way. And the platform has helped millions of people and thousands of schools. We've, I think, exchanged now more than 100 million credentials in our history. So it's become a global, endeavor. And like I said, something I'm truly proud of. It's been my life's work.
And your two co-founders, did you go to school with them? How did you come across them and join together?
Yeah, so one of my co-founders is a gentleman who is a generation above me, John Reese, and he was a brilliant entrepreneur who had had an incredible amount of success, and really was he was our CEO, and rightfully so, because I was really young and didn't really have the wherewithal to be able to build a big company. And then my other co-founder, I had met him through my staffing business. He is a product guy, a product guru, really. And so he had a unique talent for building technology. And so those guys had some skills that I just didn't have, but they needed someone to sell the product. And I was passionate about what we were doing. So kind of naturally, I was the evangelist, and they, they had their roles, and that's how we built the company.
So John Reese was someone that, was maybe a few decades older, had a lot of experience in business.
Yeah.
What what prompted him to want to work with, you know, a guy like yourself who at that point, hadn't really proven himself. You're
Yeah.
probably 24, 25 years
Yeah.
old with
Yeah.
no track record and a,
Yeah.
a good sounding idea, but what kind of made him want to go into business with you?
Yeah, Tom, it's a great question, and I would say that I feel tremendously fortunate to have both of those guys, as co-founders. They brought so many things to the business that I never had. But John specifically, I think he knew that it was a good idea, number one. But I think second, he saw the passion that we had for the idea, and I think that that was inspiring to him. And it's kind of funny now. I'm 43 years old, and somebody like me, I get inspired by that 23-year-old kid who is coming up, and I think there's a little bit of a pay it forward aspect to business. Good people want to help that next generation, so there was a little bit of that too. And John was not only a real spearhead of our business, but he was a great mentor and friend, and somebody I feel was just crucial to our success. My other partner, Mark Cohen, he was also a little bit older than me. He had a lot more experience, and he brought so much to the business's success as well.
So you start the company, right? You've
Hmm.
got the product guru, you've
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
business veteran, and then you've got you who is maybe more of a natural born salesperson. How what were the early days like? When going from this idea to actually hitting, pounding the pavement to try to, turn this into some revenue. What were the early days? What were the first few sales like?
Well, I think starting anything, it's a lot of climbing uphill, and it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of hearing no. And especially for us, I mean, none of us, no, the three founders of Parchment, none of us had ever worked inside of a school. Our own education was our only experience in education. So it's not like we came to it with some amazing domain expertise. But I think it was grit that got us through those first few years, and a knowledge that what we were doing was really something meaningful and valuable. And so that's how we got ourselves from kind of three employees to eventually hundreds of employees. But it took a long time. And I know a lot of your listeners probably have a vast array of industries that they serve. Selling to education is not very easy because for the most part, you're selling to the government, and government takes a while to make decisions. It's very committee based. And it took a tremendous amount of trial and error, making a lot of mistakes before we really started to, get the ball rolling. And fortunately, I had very patient investors and patient partners, and they allowed me to make those mistakes. And I'm grateful for that.
So were you, I mean, just take me back 20 years ago, right? Because I'm 27, so I've
Yeah,
been selling for 5 years,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm using LinkedIn. I'm calling people because I have their number from,
None of that.
Zoom
Yep.
Info.
Didn't
I'm logging
exist.
it in Salesforce.
Nope. We didn't know what
I'm
that was.
I'm emailing them on Gmail and using
We had
outreach
that.
for sales
Yeah.
engagement, right? So like,
Yeah.
are you just cold emailing? Are you going door to door, like flying to these schools or driving to these schools? Are you going like
Yeah.
looking up the yellow pages? What's the sales strategy back then?
Yeah. So one of the things that was very cool and I think advantageous for us was that the schools and school districts had a lot of these contacts listed on their websites because schools have to have that level of transparency with their community. So it was pretty easy for me to go and use, search basically to find a school district and identify who maybe are the kinds of people that I wanted to connect with. But yeah, I mean, it was phone. It was picking up the phone and making those cold calls. And then eventually, we had to start showing up and showing up in these meetings that had at times, perhaps 10, 20, even 50 different individuals in there, all of whom had a stake in kind of making decisions around modernizing processes or procuring new technology. And so you can imagine being a young person without a lot of experience, that was a big deal. Fortunately, I would say schools like kids, they like young people, right? So I had a little bit of an advantage there because being young, they didn't necessarily I would say look down on me. But at the same time, I really had to quickly up my level of professionalism if I was gonna, be able to bond with these contacts and convince them to trust us. And when you're dealing with transcripts, I mean that's a student record, has a tremendous amount of sensitive data on it, and so these schools and school officials weren't just willing, willy nilly to like work with us. I mean, they needed to know that we could be trusted. And at age 24 or 25, that wasn't always so easy to do. It was challenging in those early days.
I've struggled with the same thing of, trying to sell to people, decades older than me. And I look, 10 years younger than I probably am also, which doesn't
Me
help
too.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So how, like, do you remember what you did back in the day to try to earn credibility with those folks when you were so young?
So I think the key change that I made, I mean, when I started, I thought it was all about talking and evangelizing what we do. And I was very exuberant. I still have a lot of enthusiasm for what we do. And I would, call these people and, just go on and on about what we do. And I changed my way about maybe 2 years in, and I went from talking to listening. And as soon as I started doing more listening, good things happened because when I was listening, I could uncover the pains that these schools and school districts had. And when I uncovered pain, then I knew I had a solution that could solve that pain. And that's what led to a lot more success. So, today I would say if I were on a prospecting call, I'm probably talking 20% of the time and listening 80% of the time. Way back when I started, I was probably talking 99% of the time and listening 1% of the time. And, occasionally I could get through to somebody, but it's the listening that I think makes a sales professional good at what they do.
Totally. I
You
agree. And
agree?
I do. Was there a turning point for you? You mentioned like the first 2 years, you couldn't shut up in a meeting. And then after that, it's like, all right, no, I'm starting to figure this out. Do you recall, did someone have to tell you that? Did you just get did you lose enough deals where you
Yeah.
just started to break through to your head? What was the turning point?
Yeah, it was just losing a lot of deals, and we didn't have really competition, so it wasn't like they would go with another vendor, but I just wouldn't hear back from them,
Mm,
and or they would say, yeah, we're just not sure we're ready to do this, or and I was like, there's got to be a better way, and so I started to be more inquisitive and take the time to really, understand their world, and a lot of that at back then, there wasn't video chat and those kinds of things, so I had to really get out there to do that. And I spent a considerable amount of my career on the road. I mean, I was a road warrior for probably 15 years, but that's what I would do. I would sit down with these school professionals and school district professionals, and we just talk. And I stopped being so over the top exuberant and more of a peer. And as soon as I started to do that, I could see that people started to respect me more and appreciate me, and they were starting to then reveal things to me that they didn't do before, and I was like, okay, now I'm really starting to see how I can help these folks. We won some bigger deals, and that really was the turning point. Eventually I had professional sales training. This was like 5 years ago, and I learned that all the things that I kind of became to do were the right things, but I didn't know that. I had no previous experience, and so I was just shooting off the cuff, and so you make a lot. You have to make some mistakes. It's okay.
and you say you just got that sales training 5 years ago, or your
Yeah,
company
maybe
hired
4 years
someone?
ago, we finally had the resource to be able to bring in professional sales training. It was terrific, and I highly recommend to any of your listeners, if they can afford it on their own or through their employer, sales training matters. I mean, use some of these techniques. They work, but I figured a lot of it out on my own. I didn't have like necessarily names for everything. It wasn't all like detailed out, but I would say I was doing most of those things, you know, by the time 2 or 3 years into the business, and that really was the game changer.
How about, learning, through books or, back then, listening to tapes in the car or anything like that? Were you a big reader, to kind of learn about sales or business or success, or were you really just focused so much on the business that you didn't pay much attention to that?
Yeah, Tom. I mean, I think I was just so heads down on the business that I wasn't really looking at my own professional development. And I think had I done that, I probably would have gotten further along than we did more quickly. But when you're an entrepreneur, and especially when you take other people's money, venture capital, there's so much pressure and so much on you to perform that it was an 18-hour day every day, and I was just so focused on making sure we made sales. So even if I did it wrong, I felt like, all right, as long as I'm devoting my entire life to this, I'm doing right by my investors. And so in hindsight, though, I wish that I had that sales training. I think this should be part of college education. I mean, this stuff really is good training, and it really helps you throughout your life. And I don't know. I think I had a business minor in college, but there was never sales training as part of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few schools that have any sort of sales course even to this day. A few have sales majors, a decent amount have sales courses, but it's pretty high level, and it should be required because there's so many transferable skills. Half the people that graduate school pretty much get into some level of sales, at least to try.
Sure.
And even if you're not in sales, everything can be transferable. The relationships that you have,
Yeah.
working with your boss, working with, if you have any sort of customer in any sort of role, and even with friends and family, some of the just interpersonal relationships that you have. So I think there's so much to be learned from just taking a sales course or giving yourself a shot in sales for a year coming out of school.
Yeah, I agree. It's just so crucial. And in today's world, and it's kind of interesting as we look at kind of our economy right now. I mean, I would say that if you're a good sales professional, you're probably pretty recession proof, right? I mean, every company, whether they're struggling or doing well, needs to continue to make sales. And so I think it's a really, really good and valuable career, and it's a career that again, is pretty recession proof. So I think you just got to kind of become somebody that people can rely on, and there's always going to be a job out there for you.
Yep. And so you mentioned, you were a road warrior. You mentioned the
Mhm.
long days. Like, could you take me through? I know this is maybe a while ago, but you know, 10 years ago, can you take me through what a normal week or a normal month looked like? Like, how much travel was there? What did the days look like? How much time was spent, making calls versus you're face to face with people versus maybe you're doing other creative things or, you know, just hair pulling out things that you had to do to make the business work. Could you walk me through what that time was like and what an average week or day looked like?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate, and I think it was a very wise move for Parchment, that it really allowed me and wanted me to stay very focused on bringing in revenue. I was our only sales guy for for several years. Eventually, we started to hire people, but for many years I was the only person. So I didn't have to worry about payroll, or I didn't have to worry about filling out an insurance application, or my partners did that. I was really solely focused on, driving new sales. But most of my weeks really started on Sunday. Oftentimes, because I live in LA and we were, looking to work on a national basis, I was often using Sunday as a travel day, flying out of LAX and going somewhere. And that somewhere could have been Northern Virginia, and I could have been going up and down the Mid Atlantic that week, or it could have been somewhere like Houston, Texas, and I may have visited some schools or school districts there. One of the things about our market is that anywhere there are families, there are schools. So I really have traversed our entire country. I've been everywhere. I mean, really everywhere, to small towns and big cities. But a lot of my week was spent on the road, and during the day, I was focused on meeting with school or school district officials. And then, when I get back to the hotel room, I was doing prospecting, or I was, making notes on the meetings I had, or creating the presentation for the next day. So it was kind of this constant movement. And I don't know that I could sustain that today at 43, but at 28, it was a pretty fun and incredible experience. And I had a very patient wife. Eventually, we started to have a family, and it was a lot harder to be on the road. But I'm making up for it today. I spend a lot of time at home with my wife and kids. But yeah, back then that's what I did.
Yeah, how was that balance of managing your time with relationships and family and things like that? I mean, for people that are on the road all the time, obviously, we're filming this right now during COVID and no one's on the road, but
Yeah, yeah,
at some point salespeople will be back on planes,
very true.
shaking hands with customers who
Yeah.
whenever that may be. So um how did you handle that? Do you think you did a good job? Do you have tips for folks? I'm sure, I know it was a tough way to balance, and maybe balance isn't even a really true goal that you can have in that type of a situation.
Well, I think in any relationship, communication is just so critical, right? And so, in my personal relationship, I mean, my wife, she knew what she was getting into, and in a very positive way. I think she saw me from and was attracted to me for my ambition. It wasn't for my good looks, because I don't have them. So she was
Yeah.
attracted to me for my ambition, and she came from a family of entrepreneurs as well. So
Mm.
she kind of knew that, and she understood it. And we had a dream together, which was to build the business, and eventually have a certain lifestyle as a result of that. And that's happened. And so but it was a sacrifice for both of us, and an investment for both of us. And I think it's not for everybody. And it's funny, sometimes I'll say absence makes the heart grow fonder. I think sometimes in those early years, the fact that we weren't together every day brought us closer when we were together. Now, of course, the idea of being far apart is not good. That would not be fun. And COVID is, help. I mean, it's made us so that we're together all the time, and I like that a lot better. So I'm happier being closer to home, and I don't know that I'll ever go back to the road warrior way. But sales is not for everybody, and sales is not for everyone's family. And you kind of got to be in it together. But it can be a very lucrative career, and people that want to have a certain lifestyle sometimes are attracted to sales because of that.
Yeah. How was the process of you scaling up the team? You mentioned you were the lone salesperson for a while.
Yeah.
I know you folks got to a few hundred people, but were you running the sales team? Did you help recruit and hire and then lead them?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a recruiting background, as I mentioned earlier in the call, that I
Yeah.
had this staffing firm. So the only like other activity that I was doing on the side was basically recruiting members of the Parchment team, and I hired people beyond just sales. I hired people for customer service or product development, or variety of people, and it was a great rewarding part of my job because we had just such an amazing team, still do. But yeah, we started to have the resource to be able to make some hires. At first, it was just a few people, and then eventually, we recognized that there was really a need to bring in kind of sales management, like an executive that oversaw sales. And that was not really what I wanted to do with my career. I didn't enjoy or want to kind of manage people. I really liked what I was doing, just evangelizing our product. So eventually, I actually hired myself a boss, and that was a good thing. That took a lot of the responsibility away from some of the more mundane tasks that I was doing, so I could just focus on working with the schools. And yeah, they built up a pretty sizable sales organization. I think today Parchment has somewhere around 50 people in sales, so it's a good team.
So how about taking the ego out of play, right? Because you're the co-founder, you've built this team up, right? And a lot of people would probably say, hey, as we're scaling this team up, I want to be the one that coaches everyone. I want to bring in my people to the organization. I want to build the methodology that folks are using. I want to decide, who's, getting paid what and who gets promoted and who's managing our team. But it seems like, one, you had the humility to understand that maybe that's just not your strong suit, and also just follow with like, man, you just love the sales process and love to go out there on the road yourself, and that's just some of what you're strong at and maybe some of what you're good at and what you enjoy to do.
Yeah, Tom, it's a good. I mean, it's very true, right? We did at some point. I don't remember, maybe 10 years ago or something. We did that Strengths Finders, which is another
Yeah.
exercise that I highly recommend people do. I think you can do it online, but it was kind of one of those moments in my life where I was like, okay, I figured out what I'm good at, and then Strengths Finders is all about kind of trying to maximize what you're good at rather than trying to work hard to improve the things you're not. And I really got into that. I was like, okay, that totally makes sense. Here I am, and I'm not good at a lot of things, but I was pretty good at winning these deals and helping the business grow through sales. And I was like, okay, if I can just stay focused on that, that's going to be how I really make my contribution here. And there were so many other things that I could have done that I wasn't so good at and I wasn't very passionate about. So fortunately, the company had the resources to be able to bring in talent to do those things. And I obviously knew that I had a fiduciary responsibility to maximize my sales results, but I also had a personal responsibility to myself to do something that I enjoyed and look forward to every day. And I felt like I was able to do both that way. But again, yeah, I was never a guy that I never wanted to be a CEO or a big manager or run a company. That was never my interest. I just had an idea. I wanted to solve people's problems, and I really enjoyed working with the prospects. That was fun. Working with people. That's what it's all about.
Was there ever a point where again, you're starting out so young. You don't have a track record. It was probably tough to get your first few customers. You've got venture backing with that
Yeah.
pressure as well. Was there a point where you thought to yourself early on, like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like maybe I'm better suited going being the salesperson at, IBM or Xerox or somewhere else where it's like a great sales organization, but it's a big company and I can
Mhm.
just kind of do my thing. Did that ever cross your mind?
So maybe it's a unique trait about me, maybe it's a unique trait about entrepreneurs, but I think that you kind of have to have this blinders on that no matter what the challenge is before you, you're just going to go. And that was always me. I just always had this no can do attitude on that failure wasn't an option for me. I was going to see to make this successful. So yeah, I never like thought to myself, oh, maybe I should go just get a real job. Or and early in those days, this was not lucrative. I mean, I mooched off my now wife, but at that time girlfriend. I went many months without being paid at times. It was not so easy. I was living it with out of my parents' house. So I was not doing it because it was lucrative. I was doing it because I really believed in it, and I knew eventually that the financial reward would come, but I that wasn't my motivator per se. My motivator was really just because I believed so wholeheartedly in our solution and what we do. And I don't think you have to be an entrepreneur to do that. I mean, most good sales professionals I know truly believe in what they're selling. And there's a I mean, whether you go and buy a car, or whether you go to a restaurant and sit down, and that waiter or waitress tells you, hey, our burger is really the best. You can tell whether they're just giving you a line or whether they truly wholeheartedly believe in that. And I wholeheartedly believe in what we do at Parchment.
What would you say to to a salesperson that maybe was unsure and they had seen success and maybe they were thinking, maybe they got a new job or maybe their perception of their old job changed and they're like, I'm really not too sure, man, this competitor is kind of kicking our ass, or, maybe we've let some things slip, or, I've been hearing just from these customers that are so angry all the time, whatever it might be. What would you say to someone like that that is a good salesperson but maybe isn't really 100% sold on what they're selling?
Well, I think that you got to look inside first and ask yourself, is this the career that I want, right? Because you don't have to be in sales. You can take sales and transition it to something similar. Maybe you become more post-sales oriented, or maybe you become support or do other things. But if you don't, if you really believe in yourself, then you got to try to uncover where that disconnect is with the product you're selling. And sometimes I think you got to admit to yourself that maybe it's just not the right fit. I mean, I know people, friends of mine, not people at Parchment, but I know people that have been wildly successful at selling one thing and not very successful at selling something
Hmm.
else. And it may have nothing to do with them, their work ethic, or anything like it. It just sometimes I think product or service to personality, there could be a disconnect. And let's be honest, some companies have crappy products or services, and
Yeah.
you could be the greatest salesperson in the world, you're not going to get results, or they have a bad reputation or other things. So it's okay to admit that what you're selling you're not liking or you don't believe in. But I think if you get to that point, it's time to go find yourself another job. And the good news is there's always going to be sales jobs out there.
Yeah, true. And so let's say, for all the people out there that, maybe are on the bench right now looking for that next
Yeah,
role. There's a lot of folks that, unfortunately have been laid off in the sales
sure.
community this year, had a tough year.
It's tough.
Um, what would you say would help stand out? Like if you were hiring for a salesperson that was early in their career and maybe they have a few years under them, to show maybe a little success, but they don't have a decade track record,
Right.
working at a major company. But what stands out to you about a salesperson?
Well, I think that it's a great question, and I think a lot of people struggle with this. I think the key as a young sales professional is to get good at selling, and that doesn't
Mm.
necessarily mean you have to. I hate to say it, you don't have to love what you're selling, but you got to get good at the process. And as we've talked about earlier, Tom, if you can get access to sales training through your employer, that's a huge plus. But get yourself to where you have a good ability to understand and uncover pain. That if you can do that, then that's going to help you leapfrog in your career. But sometimes, yeah, I mean, everybody, we all have experience having to sell something that might be more of a commodity or more transactional or more, not so sexy. But there's also a lot of companies out there that are doing things that are interesting. And I think sometimes if you take your own passion for something, you might be able to find a company that offers something. I have a friend, I won't name the company, but I have a friend that just became a head of sales at a large company that manufactures baseball equipment. And he is a huge baseball fan. I mean, played baseball, loves baseball. So this is his dream job. And I love baseball too. But I know there's plenty of people out there that don't and wouldn't do as well probably selling baseball equipment because of that. So find something you're passionate in and try to pursue that, as soon as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice, because again, I think you see people that get into all sorts of trouble when they just kind of pick a job randomly, or they go and they hunt the extra $5,000, when they're
Right.
24, to the random company that isn't a great fit, or maybe isn't a good company, or the sales
Yeah.
leader isn't good, but they took that short money over what maybe could have been a more successful track somewhere else, or where they were at the time. I
Yeah.
think sometimes it's interesting that you maybe had the instinctual thought that you were kind of delaying gratification on the financial end to later in your life, whether you were thinking about it or not.
Well, I was, and I think that's, I think that's something that the current, young generation struggles with, and I understand why. I mean, every day we're being bombarded by, buying the latest digital gadget or keeping up with the Joneses. It's a very material world, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's nice to have nice things and have a nice lifestyle, but I definitely believe that if you're willing to make a little bit of a sacrifice in the short term, your long term is going to be just that much better. And most of the people that I know that are really, really financially successful through a sales career started off not doing so. I mean, they were selling something that was tough and maybe earning 3K a month and whatever it is, and eating a lot of ramen noodles. But at some point in your career, then you're able to kind of graduate to where you can either sell something that it has a higher price, ticket value, and you're able to earn bigger commissions, or you're able to earn a relationship with a company that's much more up and coming and has a much more exciting market, and so you're able to do something really great. But yeah, I know for a lot of people, they want to be able to have money now so they can live a good lifestyle when they're 22 or 23. Give yourself a few years. It's okay. Wait, and by the time you're 27, 28, like you, Tom, you'll be just in a much better place.
Yeah,
Life is long.
absolutely.
It's a good long life.
I know I have to remind myself of that too, because I get, a little too much in front of my skis, so to speak, even at 27, right? Knowing that, could be working, 40 more years, who knows? So it's like, you gotta, continue to play the long game. Um, well,
Most successful people I know, they'll tell you it's not that they had 20 or 30 great years, it's that they had 3 or 5 great years, and that allowed them to maybe buy that first home, which got them in the real estate market, and they were able to
mm,
build equity and then kind of go from there. Or maybe they had enough money that they were able to put it away in the stock market, and they were able to then watch over 10 years that money grow. So you got to get to a place of where you can have a couple of really good years in a row. You don't need to have 30 years in a row.
yeah. Did you, if you feel comfortable talking about it, did you do certain things, financially, as you kind of got through those early rough patches where maybe once you moved out of your parents' house, maybe
Yeah.
got your own place, and maybe you were, eating things other than ramen, and, kind of you were able to go out to dinner once in a while and so on and so forth. Like, were there ways that I still imagine the majority of your net worth was put into Parchment, right? So were
Oh
there
yeah.
other things that you were doing with your money, like investing it in some ways to diversify that? Or as a co-founder, you were kind of all in until it was sold or, something happened?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, as a co-founder, I was all in until and really until this last year when the company was purchased by private equity. But up until that point, I was really nothing different than any other salesperson at Parchment. I had a W-2. I earned a salary plus incentive compensation. As the company grew, that grew to where it provided me with a more comfortable lifestyle, but I was never by any means, living at large. My wife and I are pretty, minimalist kind of people. We enjoyed, as time went on, we started to enjoy some travel. We got ourselves a home, and obviously, having children is not cheap. But
Yeah.
it's really been more lately that we've been able to um, uh, benefit from that hard work, and it feels really good. It feels very satisfying because we did work so hard. And but I always tell people I'll never own a Ferrari or a yacht. It's just not my personality. I don't have jewelry. I'm just that's not me. So I like to go to a ball game, or I like to make sure that my family is safe and lives in a safe community. I like to travel, but yeah, you won't see me around, driving hot sports cars or anything like that. It's just
Yeah.
not my personality.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And so what was the process of selling Parchment like, right? After 2 decades pretty much of just, going around the country, going to every major city, every small town, every school. Anyone that's listening to
Yeah.
this, Jeff has been in the school that you went to growing up.
Tom, I have, yes.
uh,
Been to your school.
so
What's
what
your high school, Tom? Tell me, what's your high school?
Central Catholic High School in Lawrence, Massachusetts.
Okay, well, I haven't been to Central Catholic. I want to be frank with you, but I have
Okay.
been all over New England and probably driven close to it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'm from Andover. I don't know if you went anywhere near
Okay, sure,
Andover.
sure, of course,
I
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I figured, hey, maybe you were somewhere in that area. So
Yeah,
after, two decades of doing all that,
yeah,
right, you get to the point where, maybe the private equity either approached you or you
yeah.
and your co-founders approached them. I'm not sure exactly really how that works, but what was that process like of, man, someone's going to buy, our baby, so to speak,
Yeah.
something we put all this time and effort into. What were you feeling during that whole process?
Well, so yeah, I mean, when you raise money, especially institutional money, typically there's a timeline that they give you, kind of saying, hey, we're looking to get a return on our investment in 5, sometimes it's maybe 7 years, but it's not typically 2 decades. So we were kind of
Yeah.
the anomaly that we had some very patient investors. But eventually it got to a point where our company had grown to a certain size, and it really was time for our investors to get that return. And so it was a really exciting milestone for all of us, but especially for me. I had, in addition to the capital that we had raised from funds, I had a lot of friends and family that had written checks. My parents had written us a check. My
Mm.
brother had written us a check. My brother is a teacher. He was not a high net worth individual, but he believed in what we were doing early on and said, "Hey Jeff, let me help you out." So, these were people in my life that I cared greatly for, and I felt a duty and responsibility to give them a return on investment. So when we finally did sell the company, it was back at the end of January of this year. It was really a momentous occasion, really because I felt like I had delivered on my promise. And that's I'm a person of high integrity, and for me that was what was most important, and why I kept pushing so hard was I felt a duty to them. It was fun to get a check myself too. I'm honest.
I I was gonna say, what did you I know you're not a car guy or anything like that, but what did you do to celebrate? Do you go out to dinner that night? Do you like book a trip to Europe? This is pre-COVID. Like what do you do?
Well, you do, and then COVID hit, so it was a
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
muted thing. I mean, my wife and I actually had plans to travel this past summer to Iceland, but we never
Oh,
made it because of this. And so, we did end up buying a new home, and we've been enjoying the time of COVID to renovate that home, and so that's been a good project, and things that it's not extravagant, but definitely things that I couldn't have done, without this success. So I'm very grateful to everybody at Parchment for all their hard work, because it was a monumental team effort to get the business to where it was. And yeah, I'm enjoying a little bit of my fruits of my labor now, which is nice.
yeah. Well, absolutely. So we kind of we got to go back to the family money here because we didn't get on into that earlier. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in the early, did you what was that what was the process there? You're starting the company, right? And at some point there's venture money, but do you go to your mom and your brother and
Yeah.
ask them, "Hey, I need X amount of dollars," or "Hey, our company needs whatever amount, and would you be willing to chip in?" Are you like pitching it to them? What's the process there?
So my parents, I mean, I'm the luckiest guy in the world to have parents like this. And for any of your listeners, I mean, being a parent is truly the most important and rewarding thing I think you can do in life. And one of the things that my parents always promised me and delivered on that promise was that they were always going to be my biggest fans. And they were. I mean, whether it was in youth sports, they were always there watching my games, or whether it was when I used to be in the high school musicals or whatever it was. But the same was true with my entrepreneurial aspirations. And I had shared this idea with them, and they thought it was really good. And a few days later, they came to me without asking. They came to me and they gave me my first check, and it was $10,000, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but that was enough money to get the business at least off the ground, to a place where we had like a real name and those types of attributes. And that was the most important check we ever got, because without that, probably I didn't have the means to do it on my own. Later, my parents wrote a lot of other checks, and they had done well in their career, so they could afford to kind of help us. But so did many others. But yeah, I was very fortunate that they were there for me from day one. And in addition to the cash that they gave us, they allowed me to live at home rent free for a long time. I was, I lived with my parents till I was 26 years old. So 25 years old, but really almost till I got married. So I was fortunate about that they were so kind to let me live there, and they really believed in what I was doing and still do. And it was fun to give them back that $10,000 and then some. Over the last year, that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's incredible. And to your point, just had to be some of the motivation, right? When you're
Yeah.
in, random town in Arkansas on a Wednesday in
Yep.
July in 2007, right? And it's just like, well, hey, I have people
Oh
that,
yeah.
I'm paying back here.
Definitely, definitely. And you got to justify your own time, right? I was putting in huge amounts of hours, and it's an opportunity cost. So, I knew that I had to justify that. But I think sales, regardless of whether you're working for someone else or working for yourself, it's a very entrepreneurial a career, right? I mean, most salespeople are they have to be self-motivated and driven, and most are individual contributors, not everybody, but most are individual contributors. So whether you have your own company or whether you're working for someone else, you can kind of envision your territory or your quota as really being your own. I mean, it's your own to win or lose. And so it's a lot like having a business, regardless of, whether that company is something you started or whether you work for a large corporation.
Yeah. And so what do you do now? What's the, after the acquisition, are you still involved or are you taking
I
a little break?
am, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's my life's work. So I still am proud to be a Parchy, as they say.
Yeah.
And I still am doing largely what I did before the acquisition, which is so cool. And really gotten to know the executive management at Parchment well, and I think there's a mutual respect and trust there. So I'm probably, until I feel the time is no longer right for me, I hope that I'll have a job, and it keeps me busy, and it's fun, and I'm very proud of it. So yeah, I have no plans to do anything different anytime soon. But I'm sure at some point, I'll maybe get that entrepreneurial bug again, and we'll start something else.
Yeah, that's awesome. The last piece that I wanted to bring up was mentorship. We actually got connected through, a mutual friend of
Yeah.
ours, that, you have been mentoring him, whether it's formally or informally, it seems like for the
Yeah.
last few years. So, could you talk a little bit about, you know, what your stance is there on you've put so much into the sales profession, and
Yeah.
you've talked about giving back, like what your thoughts are on that, and maybe even any advice you would have to that young, hungry salesperson that would love to have a mentor of someone that has been doing it for decades, and could help them, kind of guide them on their career path.
Yeah, I learned at an early age that people love to help each other, and especially, the older generation likes to help that younger generation. If they see somebody that's ambitious, that's smart, that's honest, they're willing to lend a hand. And there's a tremendous amount of people out there like that. And you don't necessarily have to know them directly. I mean, you mentioned LinkedIn earlier. Find somebody on LinkedIn that you think has had a good career, and reach out to them and be very transparent and say, look, I'm not looking I'm purely just looking for a mentor. I think you'll be surprised at how willing people are to help you. And most of us have had mentors, and I just think it's so crucial. So I was a benefactor of some great mentors. And I feel like it's my duty now to be that for that next generation. I think there's just so much that we can learn from people that have been there, done that. None of us can be held responsible for being great at what we do when we're younger, right? I mean, you got to have life experience. You're not learning this stuff going to college. You're not. And so you got to get out there into the real world, and start to be in the business world. And so I highly recommend it. I mean, find someone on LinkedIn, even if you think, oh my gosh, this person probably is so busy, their title is too big, they're not going to want to help me. You'd be shocked. Reach out to them and just be really, really honest about it, and say, hey, I found you on LinkedIn. I have an ambition to be a sales professional. I'm really early in my career, and I'm just looking for mentorship. Would you take 20 minutes with me over the phone and chat a little bit? And I will bet you that more often than not, you'll hear, oh, sure, I'd love to. And people will help you. They really will. They'll give you advice. They might even connect you to that next deal that you're looking to close. You never know.
Yeah, and then even from there, as the mentee, it's on you to, follow up and,
Yeah,
take the advice that you were given, and share,
yeah,
hey, Jeff, you said this, and, here's what I did, and, kind of stay in touch, and not to be a pest, and, give them a daily update on your sales, but, stay
no.
in touch, and continue to, share that you are trying to grow, and you are continuing to develop. And that probably makes you more eager to want to keep giving.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And there's also there's a great retired community out there. I mean, humans are living longer than ever before, right? And there's a lot of people out there, especially right now during COVID, where, they had a very good career. They might be in their 60s, maybe in their 70s. Maybe they are not going to go out and run a marathon, but they still are sharp up here. and they've got a lot of knowledge. And many of these people, unfortunately, are I hate to say it, but they're bored, and they're probably not going back into the workforce, but they would love to help somebody out, and they might be a source of like I said, a source of contacts or other things, but they more likely are just going to tell you about their experience and give you some tips and tricks. And it's a powerful thing, and I think more people need to take advantage of those resources. And I'm not kidding. There's a ton of people out there that are there to help people.
Amen. You just got to go out there and find them, and
You do.
not be afraid to reach out.
Yeah.
Jeff, I appreciate the time, man.
It was fun, Tom. You've got a great thing
this is
going.
A blast. This is
Thanks
a blast.
for all you do for the profession and for the millennial talent that's out there. I told you early on, I'm an optimist. I think the world is going to solve all these issues, and life will get back to some normalcy. And if you're in the sales profession, and especially as a young person, you have the opportunity for a long and illustrious career ahead of you. So stick to what you're doing, and you'll be in good shape.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So if folks want to, if they're intrigued by this conversation, they want to, reach out to you and say hello, or they want to get to know you better, what's the best route to do that? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is awesome. You can look me up, Jeff at Parchment. I'm also happy to give out my professional email address, which is jharris@parchment.com. Feel free to reach out to me if you'd like. I love helping people too, so I'm to as my schedule allows, I'm more than happy to lend my help.
That's great. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. Everyone else, hit Jeff up on LinkedIn. You got his email, and we'll be back next week with another episode.
Keep up the great work. Thanks so much.